And now on WRS, Michael McKay with the McKay Interview.
Hello everyone. It's a few years since I was last in the office where I'm sitting now and with my guest today. It was May 2015 to be exact. It seems scarcely possible. And how the world has changed since then, though in truth it has changed only relatively recently, since last March to be exact. You'll understand why when I tell you that my guest today is Lorenzo Stoll, the Director General of Swiss International Airlines for the French-speaking part of Switzerland. Not the easiest of jobs at the moment. I'm in his office at Geneva Airport, looking out over the Jura Mountains, looking out on the glorious autumnal colours of early November and looking out on an almost empty runway. It is indeed a sad sight. But I know, because we've just exchanged a few words before we started recording this interview, that he personally is anything but downhearted, but rather he's resolute and determined. Lorenzo, it's great to see you again. Thanks for inviting me to your office when Geneva is in semi-lockdown, or confinement, as it's called here, and at the time when I'm sure you have many other much more important preoccupations on your mind. I really appreciate making time for me, the McKay Interview, and our listeners.
Good morning, Michael. Welcome back here at the Geneva Airport.
It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again, too.
I'm not here to dwell too much, Lorenzo, on the past or even the present. However, it would be remiss of me not to start without at least asking you to describe the current situation with your airline, Suisse. I also want to spend time learning from you about the air travel industry in general in this time of crisis, how you plan your business in such uncertain times, what scenarios you're obliged to consider. I want to follow your gaze into the future in light of the pandemic around us now as we speak, and how you think your industry will change and look in, say, 10 years' time. Look, my aims are ambitious, but together, Lorenzo, let's try. Please tell us, frankly, what is the current situation? Flights, passengers, employees, revenues, finance, health and safety.
Well, I think the best word to describe the current situation of the airline industry worldwide, as well as Swiss in Switzerland, is dramatic. It has all the components of a drama. If we just look at a few numbers, one need to realize that since the beginning of the pandemic, about 50% of all flights operated have vanished.
You're talking globally?
Globally, there was about 180,000 flights operated. We're now roughly around 70 to 80,000, much of them being cargo, freighters. Passengers, the passengers have also vanished. We're back to the levels of passengers of 2006. In 2018, the industry had about 4.5 billion passengers. We estimate that we're going to do about 2.1, 2.3 billion passengers in 2020.
That is dramatic.
And revenues and finance. Most of the airlines have faced and are still facing massive financial difficulties because the revenues have gone, and despite all efforts of everybody, the cost base is still quite significant. IATA projects that the cumulated loss that we will book this year around the global airlines is about $84 billion US.
That's huge.
It is huge. And as the airline industry is very integrated, it's a chain of value, it impacts not only the airlines, but it impacts the air traffic controllers, the ground assistance agents, the airports, the authorities, the aircraft builders, and it's an estimated 1 million jobs worldwide that have been lost already.
1 million jobs lost already?
Within the total industry, not only the airlines.
No,
but at Swiss, there is a few gone already, fortunately on a voluntary base, but you might remember those numbers at EAG or at US Airways or United, but also Boeing, Airbus. All those people working for the industry are facing massive impact of the pandemic. So yes, I think, to make it short, the situation is dramatic and it is extremely demanding on all of us, because it is so unpredictable. I think all of us, we can cope with crisis. We've learned managing crises. But what makes it so difficult, it is very, very long, and it doesn't seem to have an end.
So you're saying because we didn't see it coming on the one hand, and at the time we're talking now, we still don't see an end in sight. There's no end of the tunnel in view, although optimistically we feel there must be.
Well, there must be an end of the tunnel. The thing is that we don't know when it's coming, and it drains quite a lot of energy. I like to take the image of, for those who know the Swiss military system, the young men of this country, when they turn 18 or 19, they are called for the École de Recrue, the recruit school, which is not the most pleasant moment. But you know it's somewhere between 14 and 17 weeks, and then you're done with that. The pandemic is as unpleasant as the École de Recrue.
Well, I have to say to you,
but it has no end.
You're the first person I've met who's compared the pandemic to the first time one goes into the Swiss militaire. Lorenzo, look, I realize that it's improper for you to talk about other airlines by name. But as an industry expert, I mean, you know the industry inside out. Give me some sense of the pressures on different types of airlines, short haul, medium haul, intercontinental, state-owned, etc., in these extraordinary times. Just paint a broad picture for me.
Well, seen from my perspective, I don't think that the pressure or the challenges the airlines are faced are driven by their business model or their ownership model. I think it's more a question of the demand. Some airlines are set up to serve intercontinental markets, long-haul flights. Some are set up for short-haul flights. But what is common to all of us is the fact that there is no demand. So the biggest pressure is on the demand.
Because the passengers have disappeared.
Because the passengers have disappeared, and they have disappeared not because they don't want to travel anymore, but because they can't travel anymore, because this patchwork across Europe, but also across the globe of travel restrictions and travel regulations. If we look at the future, what is for sure is that there shall be market consolidation. There will be less airlines.
In simple language, that means bigger companies buying smaller companies, or stronger companies buying slightly weaker companies.
Or stronger companies surviving and weaker companies vanishing, disappearing, filing for bankruptcy. Hence, the next question is then, how important is it to the owners of the airlines? May it be governments, may it be private funds, may it be capital markets, to enable the survival of your airline. And if we look, for example, at Switzerland and Swiss, the government has decided that the airline industry, and this is not only Swiss, it's the whole industry, is systemically relevant for the economy of this country. Hence, it needs to be supported. Other markets and other governments or politicians may say other things. So I think in the future, the business models will continue to exist. There will still be low-costers, there will be long-haul, there will be premium airlines, there will be short-haul, there will be everything. There will be consolidation. The stronger today, the ones that are able to fight through the crisis, will still be there. The others will have been either merged, acquired, or will have disappeared.
Well, let me ask you another question. I mean, it may be a bit sensitive for you to answer it, but I'm sure you can understand why I'm asking it. Swiss is owned by a foreign company, Lufthansa, a German company. So please explain how this financial assistance in the current business emergency, particularly with regard to investment from the mother company, or a mother company, and state aid from the Swiss federal government, in other words, a Swiss taxpayer, you and me, actually works. What actually is going on at present then regarding the support that you need in this difficult time?
So, first let me make one strong statement. At time being, at the moment we talk, the Swiss taxpayer hasn't spent a single Swiss franc in the support package to Swiss.
Okay.
Let me, I'll get to your point.
Yeah.
Second strong statement, even before the pandemic, Swiss International Airlines wouldn't be what we are today if we would not be part of the Lufthansa group or another group. The times where you could have a sized airline of Swiss in a small market like Switzerland without the support and the synergies given by a larger, broader position group are gone. In the times of the pandemic, being part and being owned by the Lufthansa group was and still is vital to us. The group has been very supportive, especially in the beginning of the crisis, in terms of helping us bridge some of our cash liquidity issues. A company like ours, we have currently, today, a cash drain of roughly 1 million Swiss francs a day.
Okay. As much as that.
As much as that. And we have reduced our costs to the minimum. And here we have received support from Lufthansa. Coming to the federal government support. As we have been recognized, the industry being of systemic relevance to the economy of this country, there has been a package of 1.5 billion Swiss francs of loans granted by the federal government.
Why do you stress the word granted? Can you explain that?
Because the money, if we take the example of Swiss, we have now negotiated a credit contract with a Swiss banks consortium. There's several banks in it. And should Swiss International Airlines not be able to pay back its debts to the banks, then the government
steps in.
would have to pay for us.
I see. Okay.
So until that scenario happens, for the Swiss taxpayer, there is a risk, but that does not materialize yet. Our business plan, because we did a credit with those banks, like any company would do a credit, so we had to submit a business plan, and it was very demanding discussions. But at current stage, we are still of the absolute conviction that we will have paid back that credit by the end of 2024, and that we will still be there by then, and that this will be no impact for the taxpayer.
Okay, so you mentioned the word planning in your last remarks, and that really moves us into my next question. When you sit with your management team and you look ahead 1 budget year, 2 budget years, even 3 budget years ahead, what do you see? And I mean that in the sense of the various scenarios that you're obliged to confront and weigh up, one against the other. And what does your board, whether in Zurich or Frankfurt, expect of you?
This is a very challenging question, because I'm constantly torn apart.
Torn apart. Yeah.
Between short-term and long-term planning. And while I do accumulate experience since the beginning of the pandemic, I'm getting more and more challenged to do long-term planning.
And when you say long-term, you mean 5-10 years?
3, 5, 7 years, because the situation is so dynamic. The situation is so unpredictable that any plan you design today is good for the paper bin within the next 6 hours.
You're not exaggerating that.
Maybe 7 hours. But as we don't do the plans on paper anymore, it's the delete button on your keyboard.
Okay.
But what we're trying to do is, rather than having plans and budgets and things, is having to have a rolling, iterative process and saying, let's take a snapshot, for example, today. And let's try to project 3 to 9 months ahead of us. This gives us kind of what's going to happen this Christmas period, what's going to happen. So here we have a few scenarios. Then comes spring, a few scenarios. Then comes the peak summer season, a few scenarios. And we try to iterate that rolling. For sure, like every company, we have ambitions and strategies for the longer term. I think, coming back to your question, what are the expectations of Zurich and Frankfurt towards Swiss in Geneva? I think it's the same expectations that we have for the whole company. Build, or first of all, get fit for the current situation. So manage your costs.
So that's adaptation.
Today, and while you try to survive this crisis, with all what it takes to, try to prepare the next step, because that's also the big question, is when we will get out of this, how do we restart our businesses to a pace which the market will require?
We're going to come on to that a bit later on, Lorenzo. But I just want to ask you another question, which would interest me very much, and I'm sure many of our listeners, is to do with what's going on inside, if you like, the head of you and the people close to you. What is the mood, Lorenzo? What's the level of motivation of your team? I mean, the men and women who your passengers see and those behind the scenes who together make flying with Swiss such an impressive and enjoyable experience. What do you do to keep them motivated? And give me some examples.
So I think the first thing, I'd like to take the opportunity here to really express my thanks and my admiration to everybody and every people at Swiss who, in front of the stage or back of the stage, continue to do such an outstanding work in these highly challenging times, and providing our customers, for those who travel, our distinctive Swiss travel experience. And us being able to continue to deliver that for every flight we are still operating shows to me that the mindset of our people, the morale of all the teams is very positive. It is very engaged. There is a dimension of combativity.
But that doesn't happen by accident, right? What
that
do you
doesn't
do
happen by accident.
to make that happen? That's what interests me.
When the crisis started, we made the decision to communicate very transparently, very often, the good news and the bad news, and we keep everybody informed of the reality of this company.
And the feedback too, not just one way.
And it's as you say, it's a two-way system. So we use a wealth of communication channels. For sure, our intranet site. I have become, since the beginning of the crisis, pretty good at webcasting and Skypes and phone conferences. I do meet my Geneva management team once a week on a call where I do ask to turn on the cameras because I want to see the people, and we have an exchange. We have regular exchanges with our cabin crews, with our pilots, with everybody. And we have this feedback system. We have recently created a good news corner because we felt like we're only getting in bad news. And in fact, when you listen to people, you get a lot of good news. Passengers thanking for a good flight. Crew saying, I had this experience, maybe we can share. And it has also created a new way of communication where it is a bit less managed, it's a bit less corporate, as you might say, but has become very human-focused, very proactive, very empathetic. very benevolent, and to use a buzzword, kind of agile.
Okay. My guest today is Lorenzo Stoll, Director General for the French-speaking part of Switzerland for Swiss International Airlines, and we are at Geneva Airport. Lorenzo, in the light of this current pandemic, and I know you don't have the powers of a clairvoyant, what changes in and to your industry will be permanent or at the very least long-lasting? And for example, will the impact of COVID-19 mean the end of low-cost air travel?
It is difficult to paint a picture of what will happen on the longer term. I think what will for sure materialize in the scenarios is market consolidation. Maybe not the strongest will survive, but the most adaptable, which is, as we all know, a law of nature.
Darwinian. Huh?
It is Darwinian, exactly. And I think this adaptability will be the key driver for success tomorrow. Yes, there will be different business models of airlines. Premium airlines and premium carriers have a model. Low-cost carriers have a model. I think there will still be space for everybody on the market, but I would doubt that the recipes of success, whatever your business model, prior to the pandemic, will apply after the pandemic. So I would rather expect that the fundamentals of the business models will remain, but they will be adapted to the new environment, mainly driven, even more driven, if I may say so, on focusing on solving customer needs and adding value for the customers.
Okay, so and related to my previous question, for our listeners who travel economy, business class or first class, do you think these terms of the past will be obsolete in the coming years, or will airlines like Swiss, for example, still be able to make a marketable distinction between all three?
Swiss is and will remain a premium airline. We will continue to operate a short-haul network in Europe with a business and an economy class. And we will continue to operate a long-haul network, mainly out of Zurich, but also out of Geneva, with aircraft that will have first business and economy class. It is our absolute objective to continue to offer this because we are of the firm belief that this is our differentiation.
That's in your DNA. That's your brand positioning.
Exactly. That's our DNA. Now, will the economy class or the first class or the business class experience in 2021, 22, after the crisis, will be the same one than before the crisis? I don't think so. Will it be even more tailor-made? Will it be even more individualized? Will it be more sustainable? Will it be more environmentally friendly? Yes, this for sure. We will continue to adjust and adapt our offering, our products, our experience to ever-evolving customer needs with the absolute ambition to generate value in their experience for our customers.
Can I ask you another question about COVID-19, but from a different perspective, because people like you with your expertise are able to give the listeners an insight into your thinking. What can airlines, in your opinion, do better working together with airports and maybe even with governments to make air travel resume again and air travel run smoothly in the new reality of living with COVID-19? For example, pre-flight testing for COVID-19.
There is a lot that should or could be done in improving the collaboration. a number of airlines in Europe, among them also Suisse and the Lufthansa Group, have proposed a number of initiatives to governments or authorities or regulators or airports and whatever that would make sense and would be able to reignite traveling, air travel. Unfortunately, some politics or some authorities do believe that the fact that we allow travel might accelerate the pandemic because we accelerate exchanges.
And one can understand that. That's
and one can understand.
Yeah.
What is for us at the current situation so difficult is this, if I look at Europe mainly, is this patchwork of regulations. When you travel to A, you need to have a test valid. When you travel to B, you go to quarantine. When you come back from C, you have test and quarantine. And then you need a valid medical certificate. Here not, the QR codes. It is, for us, who are confronted with it every day, barely understandable. So let's imagine what it means for a passenger. And what we're kind of trying to achieve and pushing for is, let's figure out, can we have a common regulation across the European continent, which would be a combination of testing, fast testing, and or quarantine. For example, one could say, when you need to travel, you have to show up at the airport with a negative PCR COVID test. Upon arrival, you need to take 24 hours of quarantine. You will be tested again. If you're still negative, you're free to go. Same on the back. And then the travels can organize themselves. Then comes the question of where and when do you want to test? And there is several initiatives that testing could be done for air travelers at the airports with speed tests. And now comes the next issue we're confronted with, is that all those testing material, because of the massive testing campaigns going on all across Europe, are in very high demand. And we're short of supply. So, at the current moment, the thing we can do is kind of encourage authorities to look at those solutions and try to support them, but we also need to be careful not to putting ourselves into a situation where, for example, we would have rapid testing available for airline passengers, but not for healthcare employees, for example. So it's a bit of a difficult balance. But the first lever for resuming travel, at least on the European continent, is an alignment of the different measures.
Okay, I understand, and I can see that there are a lot of things ongoing, but it needs maybe better coordination, but I can imagine the difficulties because there are so many things happening and the goalposts keep moving all the time.
Goalposts keep moving all the time, and let's not forget, the ones making the decisions are politicians.
Yeah, and they have to weigh many other things.
And they have to weigh in a lot of things, and they still try to be re-elected.
Can I ask you another question? I've just got two more questions for you, Lorenzo, because time I know is precious. But this is more of a technical question about aircraft. What is the new technology of passenger aircraft, and I mean improvements in technology, that you look forward to? And what difference will they make to the flying public and to the environment? It's not really a COVID-19, it's a more general, but it's a very relevant question.
Well, I know, because we did it at Suisse, the first improvement one can do on the airline is investing in a new generation of aircrafts.
And when you say new generation, tell me a bit more about what that means to simple people.
Let's say it's aircraft that have been designed and engineered after 2010, let's say something.
So as recently as that.
As recent like that. That will combine using composite technologies, so carbon fiber and things like that, to make the aircraft lighter, and new engine generations that have a higher ratio of fuel burn to power. hence less CO2 and less noise. We did that choice for Suisse on the short-haul fleet with the Airbus A220, formerly known as Bombardier C Series.
I see, okay. Yeah.
Which is for the same transport capacity than the generation before, burns 20% less fuel, hence 20% less CO2, and is up to half as noisy as the generation before.
But more expensive to run?
No, cheaper to run because new and less maintenance and everything has, and for the passenger, a significant improvement in terms of comfort, more light, more silence in the aircraft, and more space for storing luggage. And the same for the long-haul fleet. Lufthansa is an operator now of the Airbus 350, which is kind of the same technology I mentioned before, but for the long haul. And it's probably the most efficient long-haul aircraft you can get on the market today. What will come next? There used to be, before COVID, massive investments in research, R&D, on new engines, even more fuel efficient, new fuels like fuel cells, so hydrogen-based, electric aircrafts, even if there is still a huge challenge on the weight of the batteries and their range. There will be further models that can be thought of, like instead of having an aircraft, you have a wing, and you hang containers under that wing that are the passengers' cabins. So you are less dependent on an aircraft, but you just need a wing, so that wing could land, pick up a container, fly to somewhere, drop a container, roll by, pick up a container, and go again.
I saw pictures recently. It sounded almost like science fiction.
Yeah, but it's 30, 40 years of today. Why not? Individual air transport, personal drones, where you would walk on the Quai du Mont Blanc, and you push a button on your mobile device, and you need to go to Rue du Rhône. You click, and comes a helicopter, a small engine, and picks you up under the shoulders and flies you to where you need to go.
James Bond or Tom Cruise.
Yeah, why not? And this is what I think is so fascinating about this industry, is that there is people thinking this thing through. Look at Virgin Galactic, saying we're going to take passengers into space, and everybody 20 years ago was like, "Blast!
No, you're right.
Ain't going to happen." It is happening.
Last question. I could talk to you much longer, but this is the last question. Look, you know that there are many people out there, significant and vociferous groups, who are very pleased that you're not flying and that the airports are almost silent. In your opinion, Lorenzo, will the pandemic have changed the relationship of airlines with environmentalist groups? What do you think?
Prior to the pandemic, the environmental question was a very important question to our industry. And I think that our industry did take up the question with a number of initiatives. The pandemic has put this question slightly into the shadows. It has dropped in the priority list, but it hasn't vanished. And I think that if we want to have a successful restart post-pandemic, and this is what Suisse is intending to do, is to restart, including even more the environmental impact questions. As mentioned before, new fleets, more effective fleets, and then you have the challenge, how do you do the investment, because you're just coming out of difficult years, but we'll figure out somehow. But also sustainability matters on the aircraft, for example, zero plastic, for zero single-use plastic, for example, for the food and beverage, local sourcing and all that. And we plan our restart by, we want to include these reflections into our restart. The debate will continue because I think the whole climate debate needs to continue for the good of the next generations coming after us. I have to say that I'm sometimes a bit irritated that I feel like the whole climate debate is only about aviation. It's not. There is more CO2 emitted by our digital life than by all aircrafts in the world.
And the marine fleet as well, from
And
what
the
I
marine,
understand. But you can't see them; they're far away, and you can't.
we are a very good
target
for that,
Yeah.
and we take up our responsibilities. And yes, it needs to continue, but we're not the only actors of the climate.
Lorenzo, look, thanks for answering my questions so candidly. I'm sure I speak for all the people listening to you on this program and wishing you all the good fortune in the world in pulling successfully through this crisis. My guest today has been Lorenzo Stoll, Director General for the French-speaking part of Switzerland of Swiss International Airlines. Thank you again, Lorenzo.
Thank you, Michael, for having me, and thank you all your listeners for also your support to Swiss. We're looking forward welcoming you on board soon again.
I hope so.
That was the McKay interview with Michael McKay. And don't forget, you can hear that interview again on our website, worldradio.ch.